This is when I almost got possessed. I would always wake up at 3:33 a.m., which now that I am aware, it's mocking the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I woke up around 3:33 a.m., but this time it was different. It was like kind of like an astral projection where I saw around the room, and then I saw a big old dark shadow on my right side, and I just heard a deep, scary laugh. It was like a big, long shadow, by the way, and it just went whoop. I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. I was trying to pray. Oh, it was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I have had nightmares. I've had all these things, but this was worse. Hello, my name is Norma, and I created this podcast called Señoritas with Cristo for all my females out there who have been struggling and are probably still going through a lot and just need a relationship with God. This is the first episode. I am going to talk about my testimony. Keep in mind that this is not for kids. I am going into details that shouldn't be heard by children. So growing up in a Mexican household, I always had two hardworking parents that worked two jobs, but my father, he used to just drink a lot. That caused a lot of problems between my parents. Mexican families, we all live in a house, like three different families living in one small 3-bedroom house. And my parents eventually saved up so that we could get a house later on. But during this time, since they worked a lot, they used to leave us with a family member. And that's when things started turning upside down because I was molested for years. I never said anything because the person that saw it didn't say anything to my parents, so I just didn't speak up. After that happened to me, I felt very nasty. I remember I hated wearing what I thought were provocative clothes, like a spaghetti strap shirt or shorts. I didn't want anyone seeing me. It just did something to me where me robaron la niñez. I don't know how to say it in English. It did something to me. It ruined me. It really ruined me. Ever since I could remember, I've always been able to see the dead, which were demons, and just scary things. The spiritual warfare has always been something that I've dealt with as a kid. And I remember always having nightmares. Mind you, I wouldn't even watch scary movies when I was like maybe 5 years old. But I remember having the scariest dreams ever. My soul would actually travel a lot, which come to find out called astral projection, but this came through family bloodline, and I'll go into detail in a minute about that. Ever since I could remember, my soul would leave my body and I would just wander around. I could see my family, I could see the rooms, I could see me just going through the door and just walking through the streets and just playing, trying to jump because I wanted to fly but I couldn't. Like all these things that I used to do, I didn't know why, but it was fun to me when I was a kid. Once I started getting older, my nightmares got even worse. That's when I was like, what's going on? Years later, I was already a preteen. My parents ended up buying a house and we moved to that house. And I finally started feeling that we were going to be a happy family. But that house was very haunted. We would see a lot of things, hear voices, hear dishes. Multiple people experienced different paranormal things. There was this extra back room that we had in the back, and we had someone renting that room out. He was laying down on the bed and something dragged him to the floor, and he ran and knocked on the door in the middle of the night because he was scared, and we let him inside. Other things have happened, like when my mom would be at work and we would be with my cousins at their house. My dad would be alone and someone actually kissed his mouth and told him, I'm home, which he thought it was my mom because he started hearing that thing doing dishes. And he woke up, he was freaked out. So that house had a lot of negative energy around, and my parents started arguing even more to the point where they ended up getting divorced. I wanted to stay with my dad because I knew that I just had to. I felt like if I didn't stay, then what would happen? So this is when he started getting really depressed. He started going through suicidal thoughts to the point where sometimes he would get his gun because he was drunk, and he would say that he just wanted to just end it and just go do things that he wasn't supposed to be doing. I'm not going to go too much into detail because I'm trying to protect him still. My dad again started drinking a lot and doing stuff. It was hard on us because we couldn't even pay the bills. Obviously, mortgage is very expensive, so he was struggling to pay for everything. Sometimes we wouldn't even have a lot of food to eat because we were on a very, very tight budget. With like, by a tight budget, I meant like 10-20 bucks to buy certain things till payday. Sometimes even then we didn't have anything to eat. My siblings at this time were already living with my mom, and I was living with my dad. My parents would bump heads a lot. One day I was staying with my dad at the time. They ended up calling the cops, and the cops took us away so that we could go with my mom, and we just had to follow the custodial rights, which were every other weekend. From there on, my dad fell into even more depression, drinking and driving. They took him to jail. They deported him. During this time, he did have an ex-girlfriend that was just very mean. She ended up stealing all of my dad's money in the bank account, and then she sold his properties, his guns, his, I don't know what, all these other things that she sold, and she ran off. We were trying to figure out what to do with the house because it was on the verge of being foreclosed. It ended up actually foreclosing, and we only had one day to just take everything. It was really hard because we didn't know anyone that had a truck. My uncle, to take his little truck, you know, las troquitas with the little beds, like it's so small, he had to give up a lot of things. This was really hard because I had to leave my cats behind. If y'all know me, y'all know that I love animals. I've been rescuing them for as long as I could remember, and I was maybe 13 years old, so I still had no say-so in my life. So we had to leave our cats behind, and that was very heartbreaking. I didn't know at that time, but I was depressed. I was depressed and I had anxiety. Me and my mom would get into a lot of arguments because I started sneaking out. I would lie and say that I would be with certain people and I wouldn't be, and I would be out and drinking with older people and doing things that I'm not supposed to be doing. We would argue a lot because of this, and he had a right to be angry with me. I was not behaving well. Sometime around when I was like maybe 16, my dad came back from Mexico. He was just trying to make ends meet. I guess he was trying to survive. He didn't have anywhere to stay really. Like, he would be hopping from place to place. He was broke. I remember that he tried couponing and he would try to sell the products, but he wasn't really selling them. At some point, he was actually sleeping in his truck, and I felt really bad for him. I really felt so bad for him, and I guess this is why I have this like sense of still trying to protect him, because I try to protect him when everyone left. Nonetheless, he is forgiven. I left all of that in the past. I turned 18. I started working at nightclubs here in DFW, the biggest hip-hop nightclubs, you know. I was probably there. I started off as a waitress, moved to a bartender, and then to the door girl. I drank even more. I partied even more. Obviously, I knew the bartenders and everyone at the club, so we would stay at the clubs and strip clubs and just do crazy things that we weren't supposed to do. Around this time, I was going to college and I was broke because I had to work 2 jobs. Like, I was working at the nightclub and then I was working other jobs so I could pay for college, because my mom was a single mom with 4 kids. She couldn't afford it. Really stressful. This is when I started getting even more depressed and I started having anxiety. And then my dad was still going through some stuff. I guess because he needed money, he ended up transporting drugs, and he got caught. He had to do 20 years in federal prison, but because they reduced the amount, he only did just about 10 years, and then he got deported. During the 10 years, it was really hard because I would worry a lot about him, that something might happen to him, or that one day they were going to call me and say that he was dead, because he didn't really speak English, and well, we know how people can be. So I really had a lot of panic attacks, anxiety, and going through all these things, and depression. Drinking more, I started doing more drugs. I got in a toxic relationship because I felt like I needed a distraction or something. That it became very toxic to the point where we would hit each other. Actually, recently, I told my mom that I was a medium. I had sessions with people, and I used to tell them, hey, you know, I would close my eyes and I would scribble, kind of like Tyler Henry. Have y'all seen what he does? No shade to him, but something similar to that, except that I would draw houses or places or things that I would see and write down the words that those spirits were giving me. I was telling my mom about that, and she's like, oh, pues yo tenía un tío que hacía eso. And she had said that she had an uncle who did that, for those who don't speak Spanish. And he would roll up a blunt and would smoke it, and he would start connecting to the dead and getting into that realm. Don't know much. That's all that she mentioned. I'm pretty sure she doesn't know much. Now I know that it is passed through bloodline, that generational curse. It's something that's hard to break unless you have a true relationship with Christ. Because of this, I would have scary dreams. I would have a lot of nightmares, sleep paralysis, you name it, all that, I would have it. Felt like I was crazy a lot of times, and the depression and my anxiety. And when I was with my ex, I became even more suicidal, to the point where I actually attempted. The first time that it happened, I was diagnosed with PCOS, and like I had all these health issues. So I had a lot of medication, a lot of different pills that I had, and I took all of them. I was already drunk. I took all the pills, and I took a shot of whiskey. Like, I just chugged the whiskey that I had there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna wake up tomorrow. I don't care. And glory to God, I woke up. All I could think about was, why am I here? Like, why didn't God take me away? Why am I here? I'm tired. I'm drained. I hate my life. The second time, my ex and I got into an argument. I don't remember what I was saying because I was under the influence, and I just remember him slapping me. I got out of the car. I can't remember full details because, again, I was under the influence. This gentleman who was homeless at the time saw me, and he was like, hey, like, what's going on? What's happening? My ex took off. It was like 2, 3 in the morning, and I was just walking around with this guy. I was trying to look for a bridge because I wanted to jump the bridge. I was like, I'm so over this. Like, I am done. I am done. I was just talking to the guy about my problems and everything. He was like, hey, like, look at me, like, saying, you know, you could be going through worse. He was a blessing in disguise because he saved me. Months later, again, I got back with my ex because it was a toxic relationship. We actually saw him. We were in Deep Ellum. We were bar hopping, and he's like, hey, do you remember me? And I was like, yeah, I do. Like, I really did remember him. He's like, yeah, I'm doing better. Like, I'm staying at the shelter now, and I have a girlfriend. I'm about to get a job. But he was doing so much better. He looked much more happier. If you ever see this, you saved my life. Who knew that I was needed? It was the devil that was trying to put things in my head, because he knew that God had a purpose for me and that God was going to use me for something greater. This is greater than all of us. While this was happening, I was still working at the nightclub. So I worked at the nightclub for about 5 to 6 years. I left my ex. All right, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. And I was like, God, I didn't even pray to God, by the way. I was just like, well, I don't know where I'm going, but I am going. And I remember calling a friend, and I'm like, hey, I was shaking. I had my dog Butters with me and my trash bags full of clothes. And I was like, I don't know if I should go back. Like, what should I do? And he was like, nope, keep driving. You're already out. Like, just keep going. And I was like, you're right. And I was homeless for about 2.5 weeks. Like, I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to go back to my mom's. I remember I stayed with my friend for a week, but he was doing a lot of coke. And I don't know, it was just weird. It was just weird being there. So I left. I had no choice but to end up going to my mom's. So I stayed with my mom for about 3 weeks. I can't really remember. It wasn't that long because I was saving up and working so that I can get my own place, because I moved out when I was so young that I just did not like living with my family. It didn't like it at all. I was not comfortable. Around this time when I was living with my mom, I finally got my apartment, and I started talking with my husband. We actually went to middle school and high school together, going out, having fun. We started falling for each other, and next thing you know, we ended up moving in, and everything did happen very sudden, but I don't regret it at all. We actually ended up moving to a duplex, and this is when I almost got possessed. Mind you, I never had a relationship with God. Now, I did grow up Catholic because that's what my parents taught us. Like, I did my bautizo, my first communion, my confirmation, all of that. You name. We used to go to church a lot, but I would see my dad still getting drunk on the weekend. So it didn't add up to me. And I started having doubts about God. I knew he was there, but I just started having doubts about the meaning and the relationship. And the nightmares were getting even worse. I would always wake up at 3:33 a.m., which, now that I am aware, it's mocking the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. One night that I almost got possessed, I woke up around 3:33 a.m., but this time it was different. It was like kind of like an astral projection where I saw around the room And then I saw a big old dark shadow on my right side, and I just heard a deep, scary laugh. It was like a big, long shadow, by the way, and it just went poof. And I was freaking out. I don't know what to do. I was trying to pray. I don't know how to pray. The only prayer that I know is El Padre Nuestro. Padre Nuestro, and I don't even know the full thing. But I was like trying to pray it and I couldn't. I was like trying to wake up. It was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I've had nightmares, I've had all these things, but this was worse. And I felt like my soul was fully leaving my body. Whatever that was taking over. That demon was taking over. And mind you, I still had to work the next morning. I had to wake up at 7 in the morning. And my husband was like, it's okay, it's okay. Like, he was trying to make me feel better. My dog was like freaking out too. So my husband turned on the light and he was like, it's fine, like breathe. And he started hugging me so tight. And I'm like, I still didn't feel like myself. I still went to work, but I wasn't reacting. I was just blank. I don't know how to explain it. Just no emotions, nothing. And I felt like I was leaving. Like, it's so weird to describe, but I just know that it was scary. So around my lunch break, I called my mom and I was shaking. I couldn't even talk, and I told her what happened. And she's like, pues dile a tu tía, because her sister, because she has a very strong relationship with God. Que te haga una limpia, vamos a que te limpie la casa. I was like, okay, can she go tonight? And I was like, si puede ir hoy en la noche. And she's like, pues háblale a ella. I don't even remember who told her, if it was me or if it was my mom, because my head wasn't in the right place. My tia ended up going at night with my mom. And she did the limpia. While she was doing the limpia, she got holy water and huevo and all these things. And I just started feeling tingly because my tia prays when she does the limpia. I started feeling tingly all over my body. And like that thing was like slowly lifting up. Once my tia and my mom left, my tia told my mom that she felt something very dark in that duplex. My tia was like, tienes que acercar a Dios. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm gonna. And she's like, prendete una vela de San Miguelito, Michael the Archangel, which by the way, at the time I didn't know that that's worshiping an idol, but she's like, because he defeated the devil. And now I understand that I just need to have enough faith with Jesus Christ and God, and I'm good. When that happened, I was like, yeah, you're right, I need to get close to God. Later on, once I started calming down, my husband told me that the reason why he was hugging me so hard is because he felt something trying to push him away from me. And my husband is a big boy. That demon would try to come back every now and then. Like, we bought our house, we moved away from that place. I would see it when my husband was at work, and it would only mess with me when I was alone. Like, I would see like the shadow coming by. I would see things, hear things. And one time I called my husband because I was freaked out, and he came from work. At this time, he worked about 35-40 minutes away, and he rushed from work to come over here because I was scared. I was freaking out, like that thing was trying to get me. I was still not close to God. Like, I am like the Israelite in the Bible at the beginning. I did not listen. 2020, my father-in-law passed away. This was during the COVID period, and that's when it was stressful because of the lockdown and everything going on. So then my mother-in-law and her son moved into our home because they needed a place to stay. And that's when my husband and I started arguing. A couple months later, we lost a total of 4 family members. This is all within my mom. So my mom's dad, my mom's brother, my mom's sister, and then the sister had a son. That son passed away too. 3 due to COVID, and then my grandpa was old, so he died of age. It was really, really hard because my uncle was the father figure that I took for granted, that I didn't even know that he was there. We take people for granted until they're gone. My husband and I both trying to grieve. All these things were happening with our families, and everything was happening too soon. Within a couple of months, all of this is happening. Started having a lot of problems to the point where I just wanted to just end the relationship. Beginning of 2021, like, his mom and his brother moved out. We started getting a little bit better with each other, but then it was still COVID. Both him and I got COVID. He got hospitalized because it usually started with COVID pneumonia, and then the oxygen levels dropping. He had all of that. And I freaked out because obviously I lost family members due to that. My dad was in jail for like almost 10 years, and then he got deported. And before he got deported, he sent me a box with all his things, including a big bilingual New International Version Bible. And I would try to read it. I would start off with Genesis, but it was too boring for me because at the time I did not understand anything. So I would just leave it back in the box, and it was just collecting dust, to be honest. But when my husband was hospitalized, that's when I was like, I knew that I needed God. And I prayed to him, and I'm like, please, God, don't take my husband away. He's the only one that I love. Like, he makes me happy. Please, like, I'll get closer to you. I will take him to church. Please, if I promise you. And guess what? My husband made it. Made it out the hospital. I had to pick him up, but he had to have his oxygen tank, and it was very stressful because I was taking care of him and working, and then because I wasn't paying attention to the job, they ended up letting me go, and we could not afford to pay for the house, so we could have lost the house. With God's grace, there was this place called Catholic Charities here in Dallas that helped us with 2 months mortgage. This was such a blessing. Like, I don't even know how to explain how grateful I am. This is when I started reading the Bible a little bit more. This was 2021. 2022, I started reading even more, and I started my relationship with Christ. I didn't learn Christianity by going to churches. I actually wasn't even going to church. Like, every now and then, rarely, I would go to a Catholic church, but I felt like I really wasn't connecting. I learned everything by the Bible, and then I was still, mind you, I was still drinking, doing everything that I was doing, because it's a process. We are not going to change overnight. God will work through us and from the inside out, but the Holy Spirit's going to take some time. Like, we're not going to overnight just be cleansed and be a perfect person, which, by the way, none of us are perfect. We are all sinners. Just so that you can get an idea that it doesn't happen overnight. Started talking to other people that knew more about astral projection and started opening my gifts. I started learning how to control when my soul would travel, because that's what it's called, traveling. I started learning how to control traveling. I started learning how to connect to the dead and doing all these things. But then I read in the Bible, and I even made a TikTok. I remember at mediums and witchcraft and all this kinds of sorcery, God does not like that. And I was like, a big old gasp. I was like, hold on, what? I immediately stopped all that, and it was a spiritual warfare. Like, the demons were messing with me even more. Things falling, lights on and off. I would hear voices, footsteps, shadows, you name it. I would see it all. And again, this would happen when my husband wasn't around. Come 2023 was a blessed year because I finally decided to give myself to Jesus. And I got baptized in September. It was the best thing ever. My sister invited us to this church, and sure enough, I wasn't even there. I wasn't even going there for so long. Like, I recently started going to that church, and they were like, hey, we're doing baptism. So I was like, yep, count me in. I'm doing it because I'm tired of all these sins that I had. I just want to be washed away from all the nastiness. And a lot of people don't understand that when you get molested, you just feel dirty. I just wanted it just all to just go away, leave it in the past, start again, because I fully finished reading my Bible. I'm ready for this next chapter in my life with God. And yeah, I got baptized. Been having the Holy Spirit ever since. I'm not gonna lie, it's a challenge because every now and then we have our problems, like earthly problems, if you will. It's been a wonderful journey. I started my women's Bible study around November 2023. And this year, 2024, we're going all in. This is why I started this podcast. Everyone to know how amazing God is for us, and that He will help you as long as you let Him in. I fully have been studying the Bible, so I already finished reading it. Now I'm fully studying everything. And let me tell you that I have so much wisdom that is not earthly wisdom. It's crazy that I'm so ready to share with the world. I cannot wait. I am excited. And the next few guests that I am going to have on my podcast will be telling their testimonies too, because everything that happened, don't worry about pittiness or embarrassment, all of that, because you know what? Your old self died, but your new self was risen with Christ, and through Him, all is possible. So I hope that this inspired you guys to share your testimonies out there. I know that you don't want people to hear it, but they need to hear it because you might be able to save their lives. I pray that everyone who needs to hear and see this will see it. God bless, and go in peace.